Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Recently, a lot of you have started sending me links to some interviews that Dr. Stephen Greer has been doing, which I find very interesting, considering he never really says anything new. It's a lot of the same old promises. And one thing that I have noticed is that Dr. Stephen Greer has the same virtual talking points for 30 years now, and we've all heard these talking points from him before. Essentially, they amount to there's a government cover up, there's illegal operations, there's things being withheld even from the president. There's talking points about him briefing very important people, like sitting CIA director James Woolsey. That turns out to be a completely and totally false claim. And I'm just kind of like amused that so many of the people that interview him just let him lie through his teeth over and over and over again. It's as if they've done zero research on his past fake claims and just continue to, as long as he generates views for them, that's kind of, I think, the bar that they have. So as long as somebody generates views, they don't really care about the validity of his actual information. But it is interesting that a few people have pushed back, notably Joe Rogan, among others, in some of his older interviews, which I find pretty funny. And there's certainly some controversy about Joe Rogan pulling that episode. But I don't know if it's accurate, but I have heard that Joe Rogan realized after interviewing him that Dr. Stephen Greer is largely a bullshitter. And so he pulled the episode. At least that's what I've heard. But of course, this is rumors and speculation. So I thought that we would do first just a review of some of Greer's deceptive claims, and then we will go over a recent interview and sort of display that he's using the same talking points today that he used 30 years ago. And I would submit to you or anyone within the sound of my voice that if he hasn't proven his stories 30 years ago, why is he using the same stories? They weren't true 30 years ago. They're probably not true today. And despite all of his posturing and presenting himself as like the world's leading expert on aliens and extraterrestrials and all of this, I'm briefing presidents, braggadocious claims from Mr. Greer, he has yet to provide a single shred of real empirical evidence of his claims. But we can confirm that he has provably lied about a great deal of things, provably used completely and totally fake government documents to support his fake stories, provably used fake whistleblowers that are just bullshit storytellers that don't have any evidence. And isn't it interesting? That use of the word whistleblower is annoying me. Everybody's a whistleblower now. No, they're storytellers. A whistleblower has usually a mountain of evidence to support their claims. Dr. Stephen Greer's so-called whistleblowers, and he's done this several times now, hold events claiming he's going to have new whistleblowers, and then we do get some new people, but they're just telling stories and they have no evidence. But hey, don't worry, we'll get Michael Schratt and to draw some really nice pictures of the alien spaceships these people saw or whatever. It's kind of childish to me, but it is incredibly interesting to me that this person has generated millions of dollars telling these bullshit stories, but never actually produced any evidence. And by evidence, I don't mean he got somebody to tell some stories. I mean actual physical evidence or, some kind of smoking gun proof or evidence of his various claims of alien visitation, alien crash retrievals, alien bodies, free energy claims, and more. Dr. Stephen Greer has gained a great deal of notoriety in the realm of UFOs and aliens, often or almost always presenting himself as the world's leading authority on extraterrestrial encounters and government cover-ups. However, a critical examination or fact-checking of his claims reveals a real pattern of deceit, manipulation, and of course, profit-driven motives. After all, Dr. Stephen Greer has collected millions of dollars in crowdfunding for his various projects. We'll we also need to take a moment to scrutinize and evaluate Greer's purported ability to summon alien spaceships at will, and of course his false claims of briefing high-ranking government officials up to and including claiming to have briefed every sitting U.S. president since Ronald Reagan. My usual viewers will be aware that we fact-checked that specific claim and found absolutely no evidence that Mr. Greer has briefed any president, let alone every president. We should also examine his use of fake government documents and, of course, his profit-driven agenda in spreading completely and totally false or unverifiable information about aliens and UFOs. In the landscape of ufology, few figures have garnered as much attention and controversy as Dr. Stephen Greer. After all, it was Dr. Stephen Greer who grifted with a dead human baby a story about a tiny humanoid alien. Mr. Greer makes grandiose assertions of alien encounters, government conspiracies, and secret briefings. And Dr. Greer has cultivated a dedicated following eager to believe in his narrative. However, beneath the veneer of authority lies a web of deceit and self-interest that warrants a very close examination. One of Greer's most sensational claims is his alleged ability to summon spaceships and communicate with extraterrestrial beings through meditations. Such assertions border on the fantastical and lack any empirical evidence to substantiate them. And despite this, Dr. Stephen Greer has for many years now sold an app which alleges to teach other people how to summon alien spacecraft and even alien beings. Despite numerous so-called public demonstrations, skeptics have rightfully questioned the authenticity of these events, pointing to the absence of credible testimony or verifiable scientific data. Greer's reliance on anecdotal accounts and less than credible photographic evidence further undermines his credibility, raising doubts about the legitimacy of his claims. Greer has repeatedly boasted about briefing every sitting U.S. president since Ronald Reagan and other high-ranking government officials on matters pertaining to UFOs and extraterrestrial phenomena. However, upon closer scrutiny, these claims unravel. Several alleged participants in these briefings have come forward to refute Greer's assertions, casting doubt on the veracity of his purported interactions with government officials. Moreover, Greer's failure to provide concrete evidence or documentation to support these encounters with high-ranking government officials raises suspicions regarding their authenticity, suggesting a deliberate attempt to inflate his credentials and enhance his public image. In his quest to validate his claims of government cover-ups and UFO disclosure, Greer has resorted to the use of completely and totally fake documents and completely and totally questionable sources. My favorite is the plumber guy. Oh, he's a plumber. He's a whistleblower. No, he's a plumber, right? He should be unclogging toilets, not telling people that he knows the secrets of the universe, right? And also, certainly, the inclusion of fabricated memos purportedly sourced from classified government files serves as a testament to Greer's willingness to manipulate information to suit his fake narrative. Such tactics not only undermine the integrity of so-called UFO research, but also betray a disregard for scholarly rigor and ethical standards. By resorting to deceptions like these, Greer compromises the credibility of legitimate UFO research and tarnishes the reputation of the few serious investigators there are into these strange and esoteric subjects. Perhaps, and then there is, of course, him hoaxing aliens and spaceship sightings. Perhaps most damning of all are the instances where Greer has been implicated in the deliberate fabrication of alien encounters and spaceship sightings. Numerous reports have surfaced alleging that Greer and his associates staged hoax sightings to bolster their claims and attract media attention and, of course, more customers for their expensive, very pricey public events. Such actions not only betray a lack of integrity, but also betray the trust of those who have placed their faith in Greer's supposed expertise. By engaging in these deceptive practices, Greer undermines the credibility of the entire ufology community and perpetrates a culture of skepticism and mistrust in those making similar claims. Behind Greer's facade of altruism and enlightenment lies a more insidious motive, and that, of course, is personal profit. Through his books, documentaries, and speaking engagements, Greer has capitalized on the public's fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial life, turning his purported or alleged expertise into a lucrative enterprise. By peddling sensationalism and pseudoscience, Greer exploits the genuine curiosity of audiences for his own financial gain, prioritizing profit over the search for actual truth. Such mercenary motives not only compromise the integrity of Greer's work, but also perpetuate a culture of misinformation and exploitation within the ufology community. Dr. Greer's claims of summoning spaceships, briefing high-ranking officials, and exposing government cover-ups are riddled with falsehoods, half-truths, exaggerations, and just complete and total fabrications. His proven use of fake documents in the past or hoaxing alien spaceship sightings, and of course his profit-driven motives call into question the integrity of his intentions and the legitimacy of his research. As scholars and skeptics, it's imperative that we subject Greer's claims to rigorous scrutiny, more so than we would anyone else, given that Dr. Greer has been caught with fabricating fake evidence in the past or using deceptive tactics to sell a completely and totally unproven false narrative. I think it's important that especially people interviewing him become aware of his various falsehoods throughout his decades-long career of grifting off of the UFO and alien scene, and do a better job interviewing him. As we'll see tonight, most of the people that interview him, even on huge podcasts or shows, do zero research into his provably false claims of the past, instead just allowing him to say whatever he wants completely and totally unchallenged. Only through critical inquiry and discernment can we separate fact from fiction and advance our understandings of the mysteries that lie beyond the stars. Dr. Stephen Greer is not helping anybody to get to the truth, because all Dr. Stephen Greer has is lies, fabrications, half-truths, and exaggerations. So we're going to get into this recent interview. And by the way, it is in the description of the video. I want to take a moment to welcome in the live chat. There's some. John P. Adventure says, I saw Greer on London Real. Very weird. That's what we're covering tonight, and it's in the description of the video as well. So I will put my fair use banner up. This is transformative work. We're educating the public and critiquing the video that we are sharing. 1 second. I have a mirrored copy so that we don't have to sit through ads while we do the commentary on this. Of particular note in this interview is that Dr. Greer uses the same old proven lie that he interviewed James Woolsey, the CIA director under President Bill Clinton. This has been refuted by James Woolsey himself. So the boldness with which Dr. Greer is willing to lie is just shocking to me. Like, you said you briefed this guy. He wrote a letter and made it public saying, no, you didn't. And you're still saying that on public interviews? It is what it is. You know, grifter's going to grift. It's a great talking point, and it makes him appear important. And I think that is the point. He does these lies and exaggerations to make himself appear more important than he is. I think if you asked 100 people out that aren't into aliens and UFOs who Dr. Greer is, nobody would know. So congratulations, you're a star in a tiny subculture, but it has made him a millionaire. So, and this, of course, is on London Real, which is shocking to me that this guy would interview him at all. But here we go.
Secret government program to investigate UFO sites.
We have people who've actually worked in facilities on the extraterrestrial vehicles. They have no jets. They have no rockets. They're not an internal combustion engine, and they most certainly don't have a nuclear power plant on them. When you look at them, you realize it's a whole new physics that if that were to be disclosed, we would terminate oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, wind, solar, a huge transformation in how the world operates.
I'm sorry, I had my mic muted. So this is the same talking point he's used since he scammed the public out of, what was it, Dr. Greer, $500,000 to create a free energy device, and we still haven't seen a free energy device. Then he grifted and scammed the public for another $500,000 to make a film about free energy. And ask any filmmaker to look at that film and tell me that there's $500,000 on the screen. There isn't. So what does he do with the surplus? If he's telling people, and by the way, if he's telling people, hey, I need $500,000 to make a film, and then he only uses, let's say, for example, I'm just pulling a number out of my hat here, $100,000 to make the film, what happens to the other $400,000? And then he goes and he puts that film that he already collected $500,000 on streaming services where he's paid a royalty for every time somebody watches it. It's incredible. It's a great business model. Beg for money to make a film because this film's got to be made. It's so important. And then let's just continue.
Our society has had this information withheld for about 80 years, and there's been also an active counterintelligence or disinformation campaign to ridicule the subject and make it look like it's nonsense. As Reagan said,
I occasionally think how quickly our differences.
I'm so sick of hearing this Reagan thing. It's like anybody that's doing a show on UFOs, that quote is in there.
Worldwide would vanish if we were facing an
alien threat to fight. There are aliens out there, but they're concerned about our hostility.
What is behind the curtain?
They want to unite us around fear, militarism, and war.
Now, the separate issue is the actual extraterrestrial creatures.
We know for a fact there are multiple civilizations. They seem to be very concerned.
We know for a fact there are multiple civilizations. Great. Can you show us the supportive evidence to support that that's actually a fact? That's not a fact. That's a belief. It's not a fact unless you have evidence to support that it's a fact. But of course they don't, because belief in aliens and UFOs visiting Earth is a faith-based belief system, much like religion.
With the trajectory we're taking with these weapons of mass destruction and going into space.
Do you ever worry about your life? And you've had people try to pay you off before as well.
I grew up incredibly poor in a shack, put myself through high school, medical school, and have what I have from hard work. And I'm just not someone who's going to be impressed by wealth, fame, money, or a threat. My only question is, what's the truth and what's the right thing to do here?
Yeah, Mr. Greer has famously claimed that members of his team were assassinated. Where's the murder investigation reports? Where's the police reports from your murdered team members? It's ridiculous.
Now It's getting to a point where it's going to come out. The question is how.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere.
We're gonna pass that. It's just like an ad for future shows, I guess.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Stephen Greer, the retired emergency doctor, MD, and researcher. In 1993, you founded the Disclosure Project.
So he's been at this since at least the 1990s. What has he proven since the 1990s? I think we could safely say he's proven that he really likes money, UFO dollars especially, right? But I don't think he's proven a single thing that he has talked about since 1993.
In order to make public the U.S. government's knowledge of UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence and push for amnesty for government whistleblowers. Since then, you have provided briefings for sitting U.S. presidents.
There's a lie. Where's the guy? London Real has a whole staff. He just repeated a complete and total lie from Greer that he's briefed sitting U.S. presidents. Where's the evidence that he's briefed a president? There is none. There is none. Because Dr. Stephen Greer is a pathological liar who gets by in the world because of lazy slobs like this show host. Why didn't you fact check him before just reading the ad copy that he gave you to read like an idiot? Jesus, this is why he gets away with lying through his teeth that he briefed presidents, because nobody checks. We checked. He didn't brief any presidents, none that we could find. If he had briefed a president, it would be in their presidential library. There'd be some mention of it. Guess what? We checked Ronald Reagan, no mention of Greer. We checked George H.W. Bush, no mention of Greer. We checked George Bush Jr., no mention of Greer. The Obama library, no mention of Greer. The Clinton library, no mention of Greer. We reached out to media representatives for Mike Pence and Donald Trump. They neither requested nor received any briefing from Dr. Stephen Greer, though he claimed that he briefed both the president and the vice president at the time, Pence and Trump, in one of his documentaries. You know, one of those documentaries he sells to people and tells them that it's all true. This is true information. That, to me, is a form of consumer fraud. You're going to sit there on camera and pretend that you briefed President Trump and Vice President Pence. And then, of course, after we busted him on that, he must have got wind of that. And he started saying he sent Trump and Pence briefings. Great. I could send a letter to the White House, too. Does that mean I can claim that I briefed presidents? No. But that's what he does. It's all exaggeration and careful manipulation of the data. Well, I sent a briefing package to the White House, therefore I briefed presidents. No, you didn't.
Alongside senior government officials across the globe. Written 5 books and produced a number of high-profile documentaries regarding extraterrestrial life, government cover-ups, and detailed stories of close encounters. Your latest film, The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It, exposes 100 years of UFO secrecy.
Yeah, it doesn't expose anything. It's the same old talking points, and he collected $500,000 for it.
Which you believe has had a dramatic impact on humanity's development. You ultimately think there is a secret, illegal government operating in the shadows, developing and using alien technology that is a direct threat to national security. Dr. Greer, welcome to London Real.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Great to have you here. Can't wait to jump into this. You know, Doctor, I recently had an astronaut on the show. His name is Chris Hadfield. He's been on the show many, many years. I think he spent 500 days plus up in space. And he was a former pilot as well. And at the end of the episode, I asked him, I said, you know, Chris, we've seen this video footage of, you know, of these craft that's been recorded by pilots. And pilots usually come with engineering degrees. They're not exactly, you know, slouches in their own right. And they seem to be defying the laws of physics. Now,
there we go. There's that buzzword that all the grifters, that buzz talking point. These things defy the laws of physics. Great. Can you show me a physicist that confirms that agrees with that statement? You can't. There is no physicist that agrees with that statement, except for maybe Dr. Eric Davis, the wackadoo physicist that the Air Force called a crackpot researcher. You know, it's incredible that it's like a case study into the way that misinformation roots itself and refuses to be weeded out. Because by nature, people are lazy. So this guy hears, oh, pilots said these things defy the laws of physics, so they must. No, there's no empirical evidence that UFOs defy the laws of physics. Show it to me.
I got an engineering degree from MIT, and I looked at this stuff, and it looks pretty crazy. And I said, look, Chris, you're an astronaut. You're a former pilot. When you see things like this, you must start to wonder about what's going on here. And doctor, this is what he told me. He said, Brian, I've been flying for 20 years. So has my brother and my father-in-law and all these people. And we've never seen anything. So I don't believe it. And I was a bit surprised. I was surprised that with this evidence right in our faces and these testimonials we're seeing in front of Congress. And again, you've got these, you know, highly trained pilots telling you.
Almost evidence-free testimonies before Congress. We're at almost 300 days now. Grush still has not provided any evidence. So I guess for some people, if somebody says something, it must be true. I don't know. I think that's a dangerous road to go down, and you should require evidence before believing statements and claims made by people, especially when they're extraordinary claims.
What's happening, that he didn't try to engage a little bit with what seemed to me like incontrovertible evidence, at least to have a discussion. And yet he just kind of dismissed it and wanted to move on to the next thing. So I wanted to ask you, does that surprise you to get a reaction like that from someone else? Yeah, does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't, because our society has had this information withheld for about 80 years, and there's been also an act.
Again, that's just a claim that this information has been withheld for 80 years. That's a claim. That's not, one of the things that bothers me about these grifters is that they just make statements of fact without any facts and evidence to support that. Show me some proof of that statement.
Active counterintelligence or a disinformation campaign to ridicule the subject and make it look like it's nonsense. And I have CIA documents that prove that statement I just made. So that campaign started in 1953.
Yeah, they might be fake documents,
what they call the psychological warfare aspects of this. It was signed by the director of the CIA at the time. I'm a very evidence-based person, but I tell you, if you don't look at the evidence...
He's a very evidence-based person. Then how come all your fake whistleblowers don't have any evidence, but you still accept their testimony as real and true and accurate?
You're going to go with the prevailing social norm, which would be to just dismiss this. Now, this is a big problem, because in science, you're not supposed to have that kind of bias. But I always tell people we're science.
Greer's doing science as he's meditating to summon alien spaceships. He's doing science. As he's taking pictures of a cactus off in the distance that he later claimed was an interdimensional alien, he's doing science. Sure.
Science is second. We're humans first. And so the human condition being what it is, we all have our biases and prejudices and what have you. I think the other problem with that is the way that you explain that. There's a certain amount of self-referencing to it. In other words, I have taken care of many people who have been shot, but I have never taken care of someone who has been dismembered. But if I were to see that there was evidence that somebody was dismembered as an emergency doctor, I'd say, okay, well, I guess that happens. You can't just dismiss something because you personally never saw it. I will say.
Oh, well, that I'd agree with. You can't dismiss these things because you can't dismiss UFOs as being real because you never saw a UFO. And it's funny, people keep asking me, like, what are you saying, Stephen? Are you saying UFOs aren't real? I never said UFOs aren't real. There will always be something flying around in our skies that we cannot identify. Therefore, UFOs are real. The problem that I have is everybody equating the UFOs equals aliens.
That we have, I believe it's about 3,500 pilot cases now in our archive, 3,500. About 4,000 cases where there's been landing traces, where it's left evidence, including the...
I'd love to know where he's getting these numbers from. Is he just making them up?
Famous Rendlesham Forest, Bentwaters case in the United Kingdom, right where you are in London. And I think that one of the things that people tend to not do properly is to look at the prevailing evidence. So what we're putting together, we call it the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, and it's going to be 6, 8, 10 terabytes of data that we're organizing.
He's been talking about this this database full of data that he's going to release for years now. Where is it? I mean, I don't know. I just come from a computer science, background. I mean, you copy all the data into folders and you put it on a Google Drive and it could be done. But instead, he's been teasing the existence of this information for years. And I would just like to know, like, how much of it is some of the stuff that I have in his early disclosure, so-called disclosures to his trusted, inner circle of people that paid hundreds of dollars for a book full of fake documents.
Already handed off the first tranche of it to the Senate Intelligence Committee here in the White House and also the Pentagon office investigating this. And in that
he's given this stuff to senators and congressmen and yeah. Okay.
We have 755 whistleblowers, people who have dealt with this issue directly, not secondhand. We have people who've actually worked in facilities on the extraterrestrial vehicles, on the reverse engineering end of it, and on many other aspects of encounters that the military and government.
Where are they at? Or is he talking about wackadoos? We have people that worked on these projects. Yeah, and when you dig in, it's people like Clifford Stone, who's a complete and total wackadoo, who also has, mind-bending superpowers, Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Government personnel have had. So it's very hard to dismiss a body of evidence that large, but if you don't look at it, then you're not going to see it. And I think that's more of a social and psychological perspective as opposed to something scientific.
Yeah, I think you're right. I come from a science background, and the last 3 years.
Yeah, this guy comes from an engineering science background, and he's just sitting here letting Greer spout off complete and total fake information and made up bullshit without question, right? But I guess it's good for views. Nice socks. What is that? Like, oh, I'm gonna have a socks that match my napkin and my lapel.
Years obviously have been pretty crazy in this world, but I remember that because I came from a science background, I kind of bought into the scientism of everything without looking into the facts of who might be, looking to manipulate that for their own agendas. And I think most of the world, and maybe here because I get to talk to a lot of interesting people, have shown that there's a lot of vested interest to keep certain things public and other things private. Usually there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of power involved. And I think through the lockdowns and pandemics and, vaccine stuff, we've seen a lot of evidence of that. And there's no reason to think that's not happening here as well, right?
A false equivocation. False equivocation.
Well, this was the mother of all of those sort of spinmeisters. I have a CIA document, multiple. One from the 50s where they had engaged Donald Menzel, Dr. Menzel at Harvard, by the CIA to debunk, and he was an astronomer, astrophysicist actually. And this document, plain black and white, says that he was engaged. It was to be kept secret, to go out to the public and dismiss the evidence that was coming in the 1950s.
Now, that might be true. That was during the whole saucer craze phenomenon.
I have a later document that names Professor Condon of the Condon Committee in the University of Colorado that the U.S. government engaged to study this issue. And in that document, it says our relationship with Dr. Condon must be kept secret because he is our person, on the committee as the head of it. And what he did is that he cherry picked people coming before that committee. And for example, Dr. Robert Woods, who's a whistleblower on our team, he's a McDonnell Douglas aerospace PhD. He had
again with the term whistleblower,
compelling evidence. And this was in 1960s, 1969. He's still living. And he had compelling evidence of these objects being real, some of them being of extraterrestrial origin. And
he didn't have compelling evidence, by the way. He had theories and claims.
Believe it or not, Dr. Condon went to old man McDonald of McDonnell Douglas Aerospace and said, fire this man. He is not to be on this committee, and tried to get Dr. Woods fired. This we have on a written and video testimony from Dr. Woods. So I point out to people, this is the kind of corruption that has kept the truth away from the public.
Or maybe they didn't want a wackadoo that's running around talking about alien spaceships working for their prestigious aerospace company.
I could list hundreds and hundreds of cases like this over the last 75, 80 years. Now, to what end?
That's an often used tactic of Greer. I could list hundreds of cases. Show them to me. He never does.
I mean, I think the big question when I first briefed the director of the CIA.
There it is. He briefed the director of the CIA. No, he didn't. And there's a letter. Just Google Woolsey Stephen Greer, and you'll find the letter where the CIA director said, I did not get a briefing from him. I sat near him at a social event. So this is what Dr. Greer does. He exaggerates everything in his life to weave into his false reality he has created, where he's somebody important and knows all the truth about those aliens, and he's briefing important people about this. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're a clown. He should appear on every interview in a clown suit and clown face.
Or Bill Clinton. And he asked me, why would this be kept away from me and the president, because the president and the director of the CIA have been denied access to the projects dealing with this problem.
So if Woolsey claims I didn't speak to him, I didn't get a briefing from him, how is he attributing things to Woolsey? Oh, Woolsey asked me this. No, he didn't. He says you didn't brief him. He sat near you at a social event. Maybe you bent his ear about aliens, but he didn't ask you for a briefing, and he didn't ask you questions that you are decades later using to grift to pretend you're somebody important.
Now, this is in December of 1993. That's 30 years ago, virtually. And I said, look, the reason it's being kept so secret is because the technologies behind how those objects move, they have no jets, they have no rockets, they're not an internal combustion engine, and they most certainly don't have a nuclear power plant on them because there's no heat signature, and nuclear power fission is hot. So when you look at them, you realize it's a whole new physics.
And here we go. This is going to be the talking points. Like, we could have free energy, advanced propulsion systems. You could work anywhere in the world you want to because you can fly with these anti-gravity systems anywhere in the world in 10 minutes. We could have free energy and we won't have to pay our gas bill and our coal bill. The perfect utopia, all provided by aliens.
Electromagnetic propulsion type system using very high voltage systems, similar to what Nikola Tesla and other people stumbled across in
Gotta throw in
the
Nikola
early
Tesla.
20th century.
That's the
But I said,
prover.
if that were to be disclosed, we would terminate oil, gas, coal, nuclear power,
See?
wind, solar.
By the way, I did not pre-screen this. So when I tell you he's using the same talking points over and over and over again in every interview, I'm saying that with a degree of confidence. And I just correctly predicted that he would use this talking point, and here he is using it.
You name it, and public utilities. You're talking a huge transformation in how the world operates. Now, on the one hand, it would be disruptive to the status quo of the macroeconomic system. On the other hand, it would end all pollution. It would end all poverty.
Like I said, the aliens can give us a utopia if we just embrace our space brothers.
20 years, and everyone on the planet would have quote unquote free energy from what's called the 0 point energy field. And we can discuss this later. So he said, I get it. So, it's about power, money, and the corrupting influence of it. It is not about science, because once you drill down the science, the evidence is absolutely overwhelming.
Once you drill down the science, the evidence is overwhelming. No, I think the evidence is underwhelming, Mr. Greer. You haven't provided any in 30 years. You provide a lot of stories, though. And what are stories? They're a form of entertainment.
Wow. Well, I want to get back and go all the way back to 70 years, but talk about the last few years, because we've seen major developments that probably surprised you. I mean, 30 years ago, I'm curious if you ever thought that you would see front page of the New York Times showing this evidence. I mean, recently we saw the testimonial in front of Congress of David Grush and David Fravor and Ryan Graves, openly talking about this stuff. Again, pilots on podcasts talking about exactly what they saw, video footage of these blips moving around and going underwater. Can you talk people through what?
No, there is not footage of UFOs going underwater. Not that I'm aware of. He may be talking about the splashdown video, which was pretty much debunked, but hey.
But we've actually
more fake talking points being repeated by ignorant people that haven't done any research into the subject before interviewing a complete and total decades-long scammer, grifter, hoaxer that's been caught selling fake shit for decades now.
Uncovered or publicly acknowledged the last few years. And are you surprised that this is public?
No, I'm not surprised, because I've been asked to be the person providing these whistleblowers the information they have.
Yeah, so now he's taking credit for Grush and everybody else. I'm the person that members of the government and high-ranking officials are asking to provide these whistleblowers. Prove it. Who asked you to provide whistleblowers? This is a complete and total bluff, right? It's incredible. Let's continue.
So let me be quite blunt.
And again, the whole thing is I'm super important, right?
Over the last
Some
couple of
extreme
years, I've been asked to
narcissism.
come up here and provide
Over the last
chief
couple,
investigators for the Senate and the House the evidence we have. That gave them access to multiple whistleblowers.
oh, great. So now he's claiming that he gave the evidence to the people in the Senate who are investigating. No wonder they're so confused. No wonder they're so wrong.
Involved with this that I've been dealing with for
If that's even true.
decades. And so none of that surprised me because we've been basically very involved in the planning of it, including the language of the amnesty provision that came out of the Senate Intelligence Committee right after our National Press Club in June, and the bill that was passed last year allowing whistleblowers a pathway to give their testimony at the Pentagon in a SCIF, a secure compartmented information facility, but nevertheless to do that. Now, what's more surprising is that it took 30.
Yeah, he's always claiming that he's in SCIFs, and he's claimed that he went to meetings in the basement of the Pentagon before. And what is his evidence for that? There is none.
Damn years. No, so you have to understand, I'm an emergency doctor. We move very quickly. And in 1993, in my very, very young doctor days, I was a bit naive when I thought that President Clinton and his administration, who were really trying to drill down on this, would resolve this problem and I could go back to a normal life with my 4 daughters and the golden retriever and my medical career. Well, that ship sailed, my friend. So what ended up actually...
No, I think what happened is he got a taste of the UFO money. And this is a perfect example for people who tell me stupidly and ignorantly that there is no money in UFOs. What does an emergency room doctor make? I mean, I can look it up, right? Average salary of emergency room doctor, emergency medicine physician. Somewhere between $345,000 and $460,000. Now, of course, that's today. So this guy walked away from a career where you can make almost $500,000 a year. And that must mean that UFOs is more lucrative than that for him, right? For all of these years, 30 years, he made more than $500,000 a year, do you think? What's the total take then?
Happening is that George H.W. Bush approached President Clinton, told him this is none of your business, butt out. And he was never allowed to get any operational control over those projects.
And this is another false talking point. Prove it. Prove that George H.W. Bush refused to give President Clinton access to anything. You can't, because Clinton came after him. He would have no authority to stop him from gaining access to anything.
I know for a fact. Remember, I helped put together the best available evidence briefing for Clinton that Lawrence Rockefeller provided at the Rockefeller Ranch.
Yeah, so he wrote a paper and gave it to Rockefeller, who apparently or allegedly gave it to Clinton. Therefore, he's briefing presidents. No, you're not. You're writing papers and giving it to a friend to give to the president. That doesn't mean you briefed the president.
Where I had been to have some...
See, that's why he gets away with this, because there is a nugget of, like when he says, I briefed President Clinton, here it is. I wrote a briefing and I gave it to somebody who told me they would give it to him. Therefore, I briefed President Clinton. No, you didn't.
Planning meetings back in the 90s, 93, 4, 5. So I've seen this from a front row point of view for 30 years, and what's unsettling about it is the degree to which people have been blocked from information who are legally, this is true in the UK as well and in Europe.
And this is his talking point. Oh, all these people are the information is being withheld from them. Listen, the president has the ultimate authority to see anything that is classified, to declassify anything that is classified. You're not keeping something from the president, but these guys all claim it, and it's an unproven claim, right? Show me one president who on the record says, I tried to look into UFOs and the information was withheld from me.
Legally obligated to oversee these sort of projects, even if they're black projects, right? So the president and the Congress are to have not everyone in Congress, but have knowledge of even the very deep black projects. The problem is these programs have been run completely unconstitutionally since the late 1950s.
And there's no evidence of that. It's just a talking point, just a claim. He has never provided a single shred of evidence that there are illegal special access projects being run and withholding information from Congress or the president. He's never proven that. He said it a lot, right? Maybe he went to what is that Nazi propaganda minister, Goebbels? Did he go to the Goebbels school of propaganda? If you repeat a lie loud enough and long enough, people will believe it.
And there's another fact we can prove. So what that means is that these projects don't have any regard for the rule of law, who the president is, and who's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee of the Senate. Now, when the way this all began to tilt very quickly, a year and a half ago, just to tell you the inside baseball here, which you might find interesting. Now, I got contacted by the chief investigator for the Senate Intelligence Committee. And this is the guy who, if he was in the Pentagon, would be the equivalent of a 2 or 3 star general. And he asked me if I would help him. We went to a skiff. If I would help him.
Here he is again. He's in a skiff, right? He's in a skiff with a 4-star general, or the equivalent of a 4-star general. What's his name? Oh, I'm not going to tell you. It's a secret, right? It's all secret.
Get the information they needed.
And isn't it great that these guys, all these disclosure dorks, we want transparency and disclosure from the government. And when they tell these stories, they always withhold information. Some transparency and disclosure advocates.
Because they were being sandbagged. And I said, well, what has happened? He says, well, I went out to the Lockheed Skunk Works and I was shown a bunch of antique aircraft, jets, and he knew he was being gaslit and diverted. And I said, well, I can give you exactly what they have there. And we have the information from Ben Rich himself, the director, and a letter he wrote about the fact that there were both extraterrestrial and man-made UFOs, the latter being the more explosive bit of knowledge people need to get their heads around. So he said, well, we will do everything we can. So that started a process where I began to provide him with the testimony of dozens of these whistleblowers, but also—
And who was he? Oh, I can't tell you.
So giving them access to where the sites are. Now, how do I know this? Because we have these hundreds of whistleblowers and documents of where the facilities are. And it's not just Area 50.
Yeah, isn't it great? So Greer claims to know exactly where the facilities are that are housing the extraterrestrials. Why won't he tell the public then? Right? And then he claims he drew a map of where all the aliens are.
One,
it's so
quote,
stupid.
unquote. It's the Dugway Proving Grounds. It's Eglin Air Force Base. It's Edwards Air Force Base. It's the Lockheed Skunk Works facility out in the desert of California. It's all these various black sites, as they're called. And we have 147 of them now on a map, which we are providing to the government. So that, what happened there is that they began to hit the mother lode of information and also people who would—
it would be a fun road trip to get that map and go knock on all those doors and ask where the aliens are. I'm here with Dr. Stephen Greer's map, and he said you got aliens in there. Open up. Open sesame. We want to see the aliens.
Worked in those facilities. And once the law was passed in 2022, allowing these whistleblowers to go to the Aero office at the Pentagon, we began making arrangements where my organization would fly them in, hand them off to this gentleman who has remained unnamed, and he would take them over to the skiff at the Pentagon. So that's kind of what's been going on for now a couple of years. And it's reached the point now where you have both the Senate and the House in a bipartisan way, which is, I'm very glad for that, really beginning to drill down on it and put some measures in place legally to unravel this entire long and complicated story.
So now it's moving at warp speed compared to, say, the last 30 years.
Yes.
What's moving? What's changed?
Where do you think
Nothing.
it goes from here?
Nothing's
like if
changed.
you had to plot a reasonable timeline, 1 year out, 3 years out,
No
5
evidence.
years out, what do you think will be revealed?
I think in the next year, we need to get, and I think from talking to directly with members of Congress, myself, in the last few months, to have a select committee with subpoena power with these firsthand witnesses being brought forward. Remember the little kind of initial hearing they had in July. You know, I was meeting with Congressman Burchett and some of the others before then and helping them formulate what kind of questions they should be asking, and advising them. But I said, you know, you need to have subpoena power, and they didn't want to do it. And I said, you have to.
Yeah, notice he never names any of these high-ranking government officials that he's talking to. Isn't that a little suspicious that he never names these high-ranking government officials that are taking his important, excellent advice?
Because otherwise you're only going to get people who are willing to come forward, like Mr. Grush, who I had met with when he was still deep undercover. And also I had spoken to David Fravor, and I said, Mr. Grush is a secondhand witness. He had the access to the people in the facilities that we want to bring forward. But he was secondhand. He didn't actually get into the underground facilities or the skiffs where the ET craft are stored. But I have people on my team who have been there. They have to be subpoenaed. So finally, there were 6 members of Congress a couple weeks ago wrote a letter to the Speaker of the House saying, we want to have a select committee that has subpoena power.
Yeah, the UAP caucus. But isn't it interesting that Greer's right there to take credit? He's taking credit for whistleblowers coming forward, that whistleblowers, which by the way have no evidence. Now he's taking credit for the UAP caucus that these 6 senators won, implying that it was all his idea. Sure, Dr. Greer, you bullshitter.
That has to be okayed by the Speaker of the House, McCarthy. But he's favorable to it, I understand. And I know that the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee chairman is also supportive of Mr. Comer. So we're seeing that happen very quickly. The other big thing that happened, I think this is probably the biggest, was in June after we had our National Press Club event, and we had some compelling whistleblowers come forward who were not at the hearing you saw. So if people want to get on our YouTube channel, you can see that whole event. One of the things that happened is that the Intelligence Committee,
his event that had whistleblowers, none of which had any evidence. So he's got multiple fake whistleblowers that don't have any evidence. They're just telling stories, including a plumber, right? Awesome. The plumber wore a uniform. He put patches on a jacket. That's awesome.
And it came out unanimously, a provision for safe harbor or amnesty for these large corporations and individuals.
Now he's claiming credit for that too.
Come forward. And once it's passed by the House and signed by the president, it would give 6 months where they have to be compelled to provide, whether it's extraterrestrial bodies, spacecraft, man-made high-tech, what would they call AT, advanced technology, or ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, which are man-made knockoffs of UFOs.
Yes, and the ARV thing came from Mark McCandlish, who had a pretty drawing of one, but no evidence that they actually exist.
You see, by the way, most of the footage you've seen is ours. It's not extraterrestrial.
Okay.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But so basically that puts a clock on it once that gets passed. Now it's not passed yet, but that 6 month period. Now, when I first met with the senior folks in the Senate, they said, well, we might have to do a year and a half, give people time. Once they found out that there was, in fact, and I'll use this word advisedly, a criminal and treasonous organization keeping this information secret from the White House.
Again, he's claiming that there is secret, illegal programs, but he's never provided proof of it. If you're going to listen, maybe it's just me because I have a conscience, but if you're going to accuse people of being criminals, you better have some, fucking evidence. And he never does. It's a criminal conspiracy. Can we see the evidence of a criminal conspiracy? Well, I don't have any.
And the Congress, they're the ones who moved it from wanting to do a year and a half of amnesty to come forward to 6 months. So that gives you an idea how much progress has happened in their thinking of seeing how serious the problem is. Now, at that point, you're going to get into a conundrum. If you pass a law that then says it will be a criminal offense not to turn these materials and technologies over to the U.S. government within 6 months, how are you going to enforce it? So now I'm begun to get engaged in conversations, and I want to say this here on the record, that law enforcement will have to be stood up. And we hope it would be non-kinetic. In other words, not violent. What we're hoping is that people working in that
we're going to get the cops. If they won't show us the aliens, we're going to call the cops on you. So stupid.
System who don't know it realize, by virtue of the fact that the Congress doesn't have any information, that that is an unsanctioned and illegal project. And when law enforcement authorities appear, they will simply put down their arms, because as it is now, those facilities have a shoot to kill order for those who are unauthorized to enter it. I know this also for a fact, because I've been.
If you try to come in here and get to the aliens, we'll shoot you. We have a shoot to kill order. Do you have any evidence that they have a shoot to kill orders? No, but it sounds great.
Places. So I think that one of the big problems very quickly becomes, what kind of teeth? What's the follow-up? Because I don't, it may be that these investigations with firsthand whistleblowers who Mr. Grush had spoken to and that are on my team are subpoenaed, and it comes out in an orderly fashion. But you still would need the cooperation of the Lockheed Skunk Works and Northrop Grumman and Raytheon, E-Systems, SAIC. I know who these are. And
that's another thing. These aerospace companies have experienced a lot of harassment from people that are convinced that these private aerospace companies are hiding the aliens. And who put that out there is largely Dr. Greer. He's the one who for years now has been saying the government handed over all the aliens to private industry so it would be exempt from, inspection or whatever. But he's never proven that. So again, making claims of criminal activity against whole companies with no evidence, right? You could see just how moral of a man Greer is. If you're accusing people of criminal activity without any evidence, then you're a fucking scumbag. And let me just put that on the record. You're a fucking scumbag if you're accusing people and whole companies of being criminals or criminal activity with no evidence.
And, most of the people working on those companies are not part of it.
Meanwhile, he's collecting $500,000 at a clip, right, to tell people fake stories, right?
These programs, right. These are extremely compartmented, beyond top secret, although top secret's the highest classification, but they're held by corporate compartments. Remember, U.S. government doesn't build anything. My uncle was Northrop Grumman his whole career, and he helped design the lunar module, put the first man on the moon. But, the U.S. government authorized it and funded it, but it was built by Grumman, became Northrop Grumman. So where the center of gravity on all this, ironically, is in the corporate sector more than the government. It's sort of a hybrid. So when you approach it from a governmental inquiry, they claim private corporate intellectual property. If you would take it from the point of view of a civilian going after a corporation,
or the alien technology that all of these grifters talk about doesn't exist, not in government and not in private industry. But this, of course, gives them an excuse for why they can't show any evidence. Well, it's all under lock and key, and these evil corporations, Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, they're hiding all the aliens. And since it's private industry, there's no way to force the truth out of them or to force them to disclose this. It gives them a convenient out for a complete and total lack of verifiable evidence of that claim.
They cite national security.
Right.
So it's a hall of mirrors. Wow. And that game is very effective. We know that at the Dugway Proving Grounds, where there's a substantial facility underground and some that are above ground dealing with this issue, the contractors, the private contractors there, own 52% of the projects, and the government 48%. That's been set up deliberately, and the transactions that are in cash.
Where's he getting these numbers?
Cold hard
He's just
cash.
making it up
to keep it quiet, to keep it secret.
Yes, and we have a whistleblower who will testify to this. So,
wow.
Another person's going to tell stories with no evidence.
We're trying to really get right down to the brass tacks. And while it's useful to have some of these jet pilots who've seen objects and had them on their instruments and radar and infrared sensors and whatnot, We really need people who've been boots on the ground. I hate to say that word, but in the trenches, working on this, on the retrieval teams. A lot of people don't realize my archive, we now have 122 cases of what Mr. Grush referred to, and that is these objects being targeted with electromagnetic weapons.
122 cases of UFOs being targeted with electromagnetic weapons. Great. You got any evidence of that? No, but we got 122 stories of it.
Like a portable EMP or even a fixed EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon, downed and retrieved, autopsied or dissections of the ET beings, and studying reverse engineering of the craft. That began way before Roswell. It happened in the 40s earlier. And I can tell you that by October 1954, we had mastered what's called gravity control, which most engineers at MIT and elsewhere do not think we can do today.
Yeah.
But that was in a deeply classified project. Now, how do I know that? Because one of the people on my team, Richard Foch, who is the top scientist at the largest Department of Defense lab, the Naval Research Labs, but was on my team for many, many years. He's passed away.
Great.
Cancer not too long ago.
Dr. Greer loves citing dead men as sources. Yeah, this dead guy told me this, so you can't check that if I'm lying or not. But a dead guy told me this, so it's true.
However, he was in the vault and saw the papers that proved and stated
secondhand testimony from a dead guy.
1954 is when we mastered gravity control. Ironically, that in 1955, Eisenhower started the U.S. interstate highway system. And by that date, we didn't need highways. We could have been floating above, kind of like the Jetsons. I know it sounds funny, but those technologies.
Well,
so
they're definitely not.
It's a long story.
Yeah, they definitely at MIT aren't teaching anything about gravity manipulation. That's for sure. And maybe we can talk about that. So look, I'm from San Diego. So actually, as a high school student, I worked at SAIC. And then one of my summer internship jobs was working for the Aerospace Corporation, which is a consultant to the Air Force in LA. Now, I was there for the summer. I didn't have any top secret clearances, but it was wild to see kind of what goes on inside there. And I can believe you when you say there's all these cubby holes of like you said, the commercial interests intersecting with the government interests, and it's hard to know who's in charge. Funny enough, it seems a little bit like when I was wondering who was protecting my freedom of speech on social media platforms. The government said it's a private corporation. The private corporation said you signed our community policy. Meanwhile, they were collaborating in the background, violating my rights. So it's not the same thing, but it seems like a weird, again, like catch-22 situation. Now you said,
yeah, you're right. Yeah, and there are some striking parallels between at the playbook of how they've kept control over the public, the media, and opinion on the UFO issue, and what they did with COVID, and also I might add what they
listen. There's nothing out of the ordinary. Every government in the world collaborates with private industry. Do you think that we could just make these super advanced fighter aircraft, stealth aircraft? No, you need innovators, and you need capitalism, and you need a company that knows what they're doing to do it. So to suggest that there's some nefarious, thing going on because the government is in cooperation with various private aerospace companies is ridiculous.
They do with 9/11, but that's a diversion.
Yeah, no, I see quite a few parallels. And again, like with my science background, I still remember, 3 years ago, it's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's relevant.
This guy went to MIT.
I had a conversation with Robert Kennedy Jr., and this was right during the lockdowns. And I had the science background, so I was all pro-vaccine because the vaccine, the science had taught me that was the right thing. I went to talk to Robert F. Kennedy, and he started breaking down everything that happened from a legal perspective, the lack of liability, and all these things. By the end of that episode, I was really starting to question my scientism. And I started realizing, wait a second, this has all been co-opted. The media is involved because there's billions, if not trillions of dollars on the line. So your pure science background isn't going to help you when humans and emotions and money and power is involved. And so, the more of what I hear about what you're talking about, it seems like maybe that was the original, whitewash operation and using media, and now even using some of these private public, strange layers to keep things from the public. What you said that just alarmed me was if they go after these projects from a law enforcement perspective, that they might fight back and shoot on sight. And so,
oh yeah, and remember, not long ago, Dr. Stephen Greer claimed that there were strike teams that would be attacking these facilities if they didn't tell us the truth about the aliens. What happened to that? What happened to the strike forces? Shouldn't they have busted down the doors of those mysterious underground bases and gotten to the alien technology by now? And I apologize. I didn't see this earlier. Lord Jamington says Michael Schellenberger might also be a look-see. Yeah, I can't say that I disagree, but we thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. For those unaware, we're a viewer-supported show. We read every single super chat, so throw a couple bucks in our hat, and we give you a big thank you for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right. Thank you very much, Lord Jamington. Good to see you here, and we thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. William Renner says he bought the conspiracy theory, in other words, right? I'm not sure what that means. People can't get a word in to ask questions. Yeah, he dominates interviews. I've noticed that. And he can also talk for like a great deal of time on one question.
So where are these? Are we talking in New Mexico where these things are located? Or I'm just curious, where are these things? Or we don't know where these things are.
You're right,
the underground
Mike Rotunda. I agree.
Well, if you look at our National Press Club event, we actually put up on the screen a map of where all these facilities are. And we have a list of them that we've also published. So that actually is available to the public now. So one of the things we're trying to do, however, is get a more specific level of detail to the members of Congress and to the investigators so they can go to these sites.
I think it would be a fun goof to get that map and just call them and yell at them like, Dr. Greer said you got the aliens. You better give us them aliens and then show us the alien technology and record it all. I think I'm thinking about doing that. I think that would be fun.
And actually see something meaningful. But the point I want to make is they're not going to, let's say they're not going to turn these over by you knocking on the door. I know at the hearing, you heard some of the members of Congress say they went down to Eglin Air Force Base because they had heard, but they didn't know the compartment. They didn't know the exact location, which was a mistake. They didn't go there with law enforcement. And this is like going to the front door of a pizza parlor that's the front for the mafia and saying, I want to see the money laundering and drug running operation out of your back room. And they're just going to open the door and say, hey, yeah, come on in, y'all. No, that isn't how this works. I mean, I can tell you that if they have stiff-armed presidents and threaten,
again with the vast criminal conspiracy claims that he has no evidence for, and again with the false talking point that they have stiffed presidents and not let presidents have access to this information, or maybe this information is bullshit and doesn't exist, and that's why presidents don't get this information, because they have far more important things to do than worry about a bunch of wackadoos making false claims, disinformation, misinformation about their false reality belief system in which this is all real.
And very high-ranking people in the Pentagon. Let's not forget that, back in the 90s, I did my due diligence by briefing, for example, the head of intelligence.
Here he goes again.
Chiefs of Staff.
Here he goes again.
J2, Admiral Wilson. And he
that one he actually he didn't brief him.
Projects.
He did not brief Admiral Wilson. Remember, this is Admiral Wilson of the Wilson Notes. He did get to meet with Admiral Wilson, but the only reason Wilson took the meeting was because Edgar Mitchell was involved. And out of respect for American hero, Admiral Wilson took the meeting. But Admiral Wilson disputes everything he's about to say, calling it all a work of fiction. Great. So this idiot interviewer is just going to sit here and let him lie about a decorated Navy admiral running around chasing aliens because Greer told him where to look. That is a completely and totally fake story. And this interviewer is sitting here like an idiot, letting him lie to his audience and everybody else. Awesome job vetting the people you interview here, buddy.
After I got him a 1990s Nellis Air Force Base, Area 51, the secret document that listed the...
Yes, and the secret document he's referencing here is called the NRO document, and that document was proven to be a completely and totally fake document. So here he is again, using completely and totally proven fake government documents in his false fake narrative stories. The document was proven completely and totally fake by John from the Black Vault, who would be considered a world-leading expert in the United States government documents.
The project code names, which I have. And he inquired about it. He ended up being threatened personally and told they would demote him and take a star.
He was never threatened. He's just making this up.
And they told him when he said, look, I'm the head of intelligence, Joint Chiefs of Staff. I want to be read into, which is military speak for briefed, on this project. And they said, we won't tell you. And they said, you don't have a need to know. He said, how can I not have a need to know? I'm the head of intelligence joint staff. And they said, sir, we will not discuss this with you. And they hung up on him and blocked him. So the same thing happened to the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Now, for those of you who aren't American, the DIA is like the CIA, but for military, for the whole Pentagon. The director of that organization that most certainly has compartmented cells working this subject, because I have whistleblowers from DIA.
Yeah, more. Oh, I have whistleblowers. What are their names? Oh, I can't tell you. You know, just the amount of just pure bullshit coming out of this guy's mouth. And he never stops and proves anything. It's just like, oh, the director of the DIA is working on aliens and I have whistleblowers. Great. Can we interview them? No, I can't tell you. It's a secret. I'm a disclosure advocate, but I can't reveal my sources. Can't disclose, even though I'm Mr. Disclosure. So stupid.
That I've debriefed. When he tried to find out about the issue, he was ridiculed first that someone gave him a little ET doll from a toy store, making fun of him, and then flat out denied that anything was going on.
I agree with that one, Area 147.
Those are 3 stars. These are documentaries. So the reason I share these accounts is that I have a very, very long history of having gone through the system in the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, United States, all the Five Eyes countries, as they're called, except New Zealand, and found that this same pattern exists. You know, when I met with your...
I'm never open about this. He's obviously a deception asset, Stephen. How you're never open about this is highly disappointing. I don't know. I mean, he could be a paid government disinformation agent. I wouldn't dismiss that, but where's the evidence of that? I guess there is some circumstantial evidence of that, given that Mr. Greer is continually running scams and never facing any consequences. And by the way, that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it, right? Yeah. Stormcrow is here and correctly points out 800 whistleblowers, 350 departments, 1 skiff, 0 evidence. Yeah. It's so ridiculous. It's just like an endless cavalcade of bullshittery.
Minister of Defense in the United Kingdom, Lord Hill Norton, before he passed away, he had been denied access to any information on this when he was head of the MOD, Ministry of Defense.
Or they had no information.
MI5 and MI6.
Or they had no information, because unless it is a threat to their sovereign airspace or national security, the British government does not investigate UFOs. That's how we know that Nick Pope is lying about, investigating cattle mutilations and alien abductions and crop circles. The British government came right out and said they don't investigate those things. They don't investigate UFOs at all unless it poses a threat to national security or, it's over classified or sensitive airspace.
And he said, why? I said, well, because they know that you are a upstanding guy, legal, patriotic, and that if you had found out that this kind of criminal activity was going on something this important, you wouldn't have stood for it, would you? He says, no, I wouldn't have. I said, that's why they didn't tell you. So let me give people a little quick, sort of briefer on who's in and who's out. They basically do
get to the good stuff.
Ethical and psychological profile to see if you are someone willing to be rather sociopathic, break the law, and take matters into your own hands. And they give you little bits of tasks and information. And that's how they're recruited up to the upper end of this. The sad part of it is
if you want to be one of the men in black, just tell them, I won't ever tell anybody about the alien spaceships in the hangars.
The guys that are on my team who've been at these covert bases, whether it's at Kirkland in New Mexico or Area 51 in Nevada or Edwards or Dugway in Utah, wherever it is.
And by the way, this is completely and totally fake, because if you worked at any of those locations and then you talked about anything you saw at those locations, you would be criminally prosecuted, because those locations are weapons test sites and there's classified projects being tested there. Therefore, if you work at those facilities, you can't go tell UFO grifters stories about aliens you saw there. You can't tell them anything about what you saw there. You'd lose your pension. You'd be criminally prosecuted. Who's risking all that to tell Greer alien stories? And notice that, again, he didn't name who these people are, but he claims that he has people that worked at all these places, Area 51, Dugway Proving Grounds, and they're all telling him, they're all whispering alien sweet nothings in his ear. They'd all be criminally prosecuted if they discussed anything they saw at those bases, in my opinion. This, just a little bit of logic breaks down the total bullshittery coming out of Greer.
Right, Patterson. They were just following orders. I mean, they were not high enough to know that this was,
I think you're right, aliens
are unsanctioned, illegal fashion. So one of the things that I'm asking for on this show,
I agree, Patty.
This
Same talking point,
around the people in those commands and in those corporations, and understand that I can state with absolute certainty that the projects that you are in are in fact illegal and unconstitutional, and therefore, when legal representatives of the United States appear, you are to cooperate.
Yeah, me
and
too.
you are not to follow your ops.
What are they called? Earbuds? I never liked
protocols, which include lethal force, unfortunately, at some of these facilities. So that is something I'm making very, very clear on every show I'm on, because between you and me and the fence posts and the millions of people listening, the status quo on this is not going to stand much longer.
Okay.
And there are people, I'm going to use a term used to me by very senior special forces people. We are fed up with being the have-nots.
Yeah, and now he's gonna talk about the strike forces again, maybe.
In other words, being, putting their lives on the line every day, and they find out there's a group that's completely in violation of the oath they took to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So I think that, as I see it, and not all of this, all I can do is advise, but I just do not believe that the status quo is going to hang together. Now, there's a risk in this.
Yeah, disclosure is always coming any day now. Any day now, disclosure is going to happen. He's been saying that for 30 years.
The ultimate false flag operation would be for the folks in control of these advanced technologies to launch what we call a false flag, or deceptive indication and warning is what's called the Pentagon, regarding this issue, where they could stage what would look like an alien attack, like something out of a Hollywood movie. And it would look to everyone very convincing, but 100% of it would be our man-made assets out of the Northrop complex.
Yes, and he collected $400,000. He said it was an emergency, that he had to make a film to inform everybody about a false flag fake alien invasion that the government was going to perpetrate. For what reason? Who knows? But he did collect $400,000 to make a shitty film, which was basically an advertisement for buy my shit, right? And all the information in that was a secondhand story attributed to Werner von Braun, But there's no evidence. He had zero evidence in that documentary that he, by the way, collected $400,000, to the best of my recollection, in crowdfunding to sell a completely and totally fake story of a fake alien invasion the government was going to run.
Complexes and the Llano plant. We know where the plants are that are building the man-made UFOs.
Well, let's jump in right there, and because I haven't asked you the $50,000 question, which is, what is behind the curtain? Like you've just hinted at it a little bit there, but what is behind the curtain? What will we find, or what do you know is there? Because you said there's extraterrestrial stuff, but also man-made UFOs. What are they working with?
And now we're going to get the talking points of the ARVs and the Mark McCandless bullshit he's been pushing since the 90s.
Well, again, if you over 80 years and countless trillions of dollars, literally, and the most brilliant scientific minds you will ever meet, which by the way are not at Harvard, MIT, and Caltech, they're in a skiff, and they were plucked out of high school and undergrad. The guys I know with IQs, I'm sure north of 200, as high as the scale goes. And when I meet with these men who are these scientists,
that means they're all smarter than Einstein. He just said they all have IQs north of 200.
My God, the technologies they work on. Let me give you a hint. When Ben Rich was dying, he was the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works, the premier secret aerospace engineering outfit. And Jim Goodall, who's on our team, and you'll see him make this statement at our conference before our National Press Club event in June. It's up there for people to see if you want to. And he said he spoke to Mr. Rich about a week before he died, or the week that he passed. And he asked him about this. He said, Jim, out in the desert, you're not talking about Area 51. He specifically said, out in the desert, the Lockheed Skunk Works, anything you can imagine and anything you've seen on Star Trek, we've done.
That's true. He did say that.
What is he talking about? He's talking about in a whole lot man-made craft that move very much in a way that people think was an extraterrestrial vehicle or an ETV.
Now he's going to connect it to aliens and alien reproduction vehicles. Maybe Ben Rich just meant that we have incredibly high tech, weapons platforms that nobody has seen. How do you decide that you're going to tell everybody what he meant by that statement? It's presumptuous and arrogant.
Technologies that can basically violate space-time by bending it. So it's sort of like on a piece of paper where you have an object here and an object here, or a point of space here and here, and you want to go from one point to another. Instead of going in a straight line, you're bending space-time like a piece of paper, so you're here. So it's the ultimate quantum entanglement level of technology. But these began to be studied in very, very well-funded.
That's an old talking point, and there's no proof. Wormholes are a theoretical construct. There's no actual proof that wormholes exist. No empirical evidence that they exist. A lot of cosmologists and physicists believe that they do somewhere in the universe. But it's an often used talking point with these UFO grifters, like how do they move between star systems? Oh, well, they just bend space and time. Go talk to a physicist about the amount of energy required to do that. The amount of energy is orders of magnitude. It would take like the energy of 100 suns to bend space-time. That's one point they always leave out. Oh, but we don't have to worry about that because they have 0-point energy and the energy is free. No, energy is not free. And energy can neither be created or destroyed. It can only change forms.
The programs in the 40s and 50s. And so they have those sort of technologies. And one of the shocking things, I think, from most of the people in Congress when I meet with them, there's
no proof that Greer met any member of Congress. I do believe that he probably met Burchett because Burchett is an alien wackadoo and would take a meeting with Greer, right? Because he's a bit of a fanboy of all these UFO celebrity scumbags. But, listen to the nonchalance in which he's, oh, I'm meeting with all these senators and all these congressmen. Name them. He won't.
Throw the footage up you're referring to, David Fravor chasing this object off the coast of California. I'll say that object I can prove is from the Lockheed Skunk Works. It is not of alien origin. And of course, they're all assuming it's from China or another country. I said, no, it's in your backyard. And I've talked to members of Congress. I said, it's in your jurisdiction. It's in your congressional district. But
how can you prove that?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Finally, a real question. How can you prove that the Tic Tac was from Lockheed Skunk Works?
I can prove it by the people who've handled them. I can show them where the entrance to the underground base is. I have a photo of it. We have all of this, and I'm turning all of it over. I mean, I have no use for it. I'm a private citizen who's just researched and collected all this over a 30-year period through just sheer, frankly, stubbornness. But
what reaction do you get from a congressman when you say not only is this American made with probably U.S. taxpayer money, but this is in your own damn jurisdiction, and you can't even see it? You won't even know it. You probably can't get close to it. What do they say? They must get upset.
They do get upset, and it's I will tell you that
I agree.
When I first started working with all these guys here, they have a type of, I call it disclosure PTSD. It's a traumatic, and people laugh.
Send me a copy, Aaron. I'd like to see that.
For me, in the 1990s, it was very traumatic to find out about this. It's absolutely real. That it was being kept secret, that it was out of control, and that there was a compartmented part of it that were already committing atrocities such as staged fake alien abductions and mutilations. Everybody's heard of these. Everybody assumes they're alien. They are not. We have a testimony from Air Force intelligence officer as well as documents that prove that those were being done.
Yeah, does anybody remember that? If you've been watching Greer for a long time, and don't ask me why, but I have, he once claimed that all the alien, because remember, he says all aliens are beneficial. There's no such thing as an evil alien, according to Dr. Greer. And people would say, well, what about all these alien abductions? That sounds evil. So he concocted this story that they use biomechanical androids, artificial life forms that they create that look like aliens. And then the military goes out in alien reproduction vehicles and grabs people to scare them away from the aliens. It's ridiculous. And by the way, he's never proved any of that shit either.
Quote, psychological warfare value. So the sort of manipulation that some people observed with COVID, put that on steroids. And that's what you're dealing with here. To what end? So I think there are two things. One is that they want to keep the energy technologies away.
Oh, yeah, we can't have that free energy, but give him $500,000 and he'll create a device. Oh, never mind. He just took the $500,000 and nobody knows what ever happened to all that money.
And this is why we did the Lost Century and how to reclaim it.
Oh, and he collected another $500,000 to make a film about free energy.
This illegal secrecy and how we need to regain it and what the world looks like after.
This is the pitch. He's got a documentary streaming right now on streaming services. So this is the pitch. Buy my shit, buy my film.
For that, which is gorgeous, beautiful. A totally transformed planet. If we no longer had to have any polluting sources of energy, the energy itself was free once you had the device, the 0-point generator system, and poverty around the world would vanish in a generation, about 20 years. But there's some big stakeholders, right? Hundreds of trillions of dollars at stake. So this is where you get into a real power struggle, which is what this issue is. The other part of it.
Oh, it's a power struggle issue. I think it's a bullshit issue, personally.
Look at sort of the lockdowns and global control that happened. That was, can I be blunt? I know for a fact that was a beta test for what they're wanting to do on this issue. And that is to disclose it in such
the health pandemic was a beta test for the truth about aliens, right?
The way that it manipulates the public into fear so that they can then, through sort of a totalitarian militarism and central state authority, control the whole world, not just one country. As Reagan said, he got brainwashed. I know who did it.
Oh, Reagan was brainwashed, and he knows who brainwashed Reagan. It's getting thick in here. I'm going to need waiters. I'm drowning in bullshit.
Where he said, wouldn't our job of creating world unity be easier if we had a common alien threat to fight? So
Hey,
this is why
good
they've
to
spent
see
so
you.
much time making, bad Hollywood movies and UFO conferences and staging these ridiculous abductions, which are gruesome, and there are terrible victims of those. But they're not being done by
Because
extraterrestrial
nobody fact
beings.
checks
They're
them
being
that
done
interviews
by
them.
what's called stagecraft, using advanced man-made ET looking craft, but they're not ET,
Yeah,
and
spacecraft.
other technologies, electromagnetic warfare systems, chemical canisters, and what have you. And I've debriefed a number of people who have been both the operators of those systems and the victims.
So he's claiming that he's debriefed people who's been operating the fake alien abduction thing. Great. Can I have their names so I can interview them? Oh, I can't tell you. That's secret. He makes an awful lot of statements that are just ridiculous when you stop him for a second and say, "Oh, you know who is running the programs to falsely alien abduct people? The psyop, you know who's running it? Can did you report them, or did you call the police and say, hey, this guy's kidnapping people with alien masks on? No, of course not. It's a great talking point to make himself seem important. I know the people who are running this program that I can't prove even exists. Sure.
And so this is something that needs to come out, because part of it is that when you look at what this Marine officer, he was a platoon member in Indonesia.
Yes, this is one of his fake whistleblowers who has no evidence. Yes.
And his name is Michael
Herrera.
Herrera. And his testimony we now have. And he was at the National Press Club event. He was in Indonesia in 2009, and there was about a 300 feet in diameter man-made UFO. And it was staffed with some very serious deep black operatives when they stumbled across it on that humanitarian mission after the tsunami and earthquake in 2009 in Indonesia.
By the way, people are now looking into whether that person even was in that area at the time he claimed to be. And I'm looking forward to that guy's story coming crashing down, because he's another bullshitter with an evidence-free, fantastical story that keeps changing. First, what were they loading into the UFOs? Weapons, right? It was an arms deal or something. Then it was human trafficking when he was going on the Sean Ryan podcast, because Sean Ryan is a big supporter or big proponent of Q-tard shit and human trafficking claims, right? And then who told him it was human trafficking? Some guy that showed up to a Greer conference.
These men basically said, we're going to have to kill all of you. And it was a miracle that those young guys.
That Michael Herrera never said that they said, we're going to have to kill all of you. This is another add-on, right? It's like, sometimes I think these guys get bullshitting and they just lose themselves in the swirl of bullshit, and it's like, go further, go further, go further, right? He's just adding on. I mean, I listened to that Michael Herrera. I don't recall him saying that they said, we're going to have to kill all of you.
Were not killed. But what he saw was not only the craft hovering, but
oh, you gotta pay to watch the rest of this bullshit. Isn't that interesting? So this guy gives you 45 minutes of the bullshit, and if you want to purchase a membership so that you can watch the rest of the bullshit, you got to go behind a paywall. And unfortunately, we're not going to do that. And actually, this is one of the easier, better ones that we've run through because it was only 45 minutes long. So I'm going to take some comments and questions from the live chat. About the rest of the week, I think I'm running some Truthseekers classics because of the holiday. I'll be leaving for the cabin tomorrow and returning on Saturday. So I'm going to go through. I have some of those Truthseekers classic episodes, and each night will be at 9 p.m. I will be at the cabin for the next couple of days, but I will be in the live chats during these premieres. If you have comments or questions, I like those premieres and the sort of replays of the classic episodes because I can't run the show and do the show and pay close attention to the live chat and chat with everybody, but during these premieres, I can. So we'll be doing that for the next couple of days. I'd appreciate your attendance. It'll be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I've got some great classic episodes that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. Crypto Alchemist is here and says, who would pay for that? Stupid people, right? Stupid people. Easter at the cabin. No, I have children, Stormcrow, and a wife. And my wife is very supportive of me trying to work on that cabin. But, she wants me home for Easter for the boys. And there's no place I'd rather be than with my family for Easter or any holiday, really. Are you trying to debate Ashton Forbes? He keeps running away when I ask him. No, I think that would be a complete and total waste of time. Now Ashton Forbes is pushing fake conspiracy theories about that bridge collapse, right? He's a piece of shit. I don't want to speak to him, right? He filled 5 porta potties. Yes, that's why there were that's it. That's why there were so many porta potties outside of that secret alien base. That's to contain all of Dr. Stephen Greer's shit. Because he bullshits so much, you need a row of 50 porta potties to hold all the bullshit. That's where they keep the bullshit, Jason. And thanks for being a member, right? Greer would lick a frozen flagpole for $5, right? Yeah. I want Ashton Ford Star Citizen account name. He looks like somebody that would play one of those games. I don't think, I never played Star Citizen. EVE Online I tried, but it's not enjoyable. It's too complicated, right? He'll be relieved now. Yeah, let him go push fake conspiracy theories elsewhere. I don't feel the need to help him get any more followers, by lying to people. But that's just my take on it, Yeah, I don't get it. Don't get it. All right. I hate to see Greer's porta potty bill. Must be expensive. Yeah. Patty says Forbes should leave the bridge collapse alone. Lives were lost. He doesn't care. He didn't care about the last bullshit conspiracy theory he pushed. And 300 people died on that airplane. He could care less as long as he gets, something to sell and shit to talk about, I guess. He thrives on death. Well, that's great. Hit that like button, everyone. Yes, please do. And please be sure to follow me on Twitter. It's at Stephen Cambion. Follow me on Instagram, Truthseeker Show. But Twitter is really the best place to know about upcoming shows and events. Also, we've recently added a free documentary section to our main YouTube channel. Just go to our main channel and scroll all the way down, and there's 3 free documentaries. We'd like to be of public benefit here and use our platform to educate people. And certainly producing free documentaries is a great way to do that. And I also just wanted to mention that when you throw a couple of bucks in our hat, that's one of the things that you're supporting. The next free documentary we're trying to make is about the Bob Lazar case, the rest of the story that none of the grifters will tell you the truth about. Ashton Forbes have the telemetry data of the Russian space nuke balloons. Sure he does. Well, this Greer creature hasn't convinced me with his claims, info, and evidence, I'm afraid. Good for you, Area 147. Terminator comes back. Have you seen this boy, Ashton Pick, with martini glass chewing ice? Yeah, I don't know. Somebody said he came in our chat and wanted to debate me or something. I wasn't paying attention. You could be right. The aliens landed when Diddy went to diddle them. He told them, can't touch this. Yeah, that Diddy stuff is weird, isn't it? Apparently he had cameras in every room of his house. And I guess if you're rich, I don't know. Looking forward to that Bob Lazar documentary. I'm looking forward to finishing it. I've barely begun on it, and I'm already aggravated. Operation Shutdown. But thanks for being a member. And by the way, if you're a member, you're contributing to, throwing a couple bucks in the hat so I could get some time to work on those things. Mostly, these free documentaries that we're making, they're super low budget. I don't need money to make them. I need time. So throwing a couple of bucks in our hat may buy me some more time. That project desperately needs more of my time. Oh, I'm sorry. JD, I just watched a clip of Greer claiming Stubblebine tried to buy him out in 1993 with credit cards. He can erase debt or monthly. Then Greer changed his story about being bribed with $2 billion. Yes, I remember that. That Lavelle guy as well, an actual real reporter for a non-tabloid paper in UK, blocked by the cult immediately for not towing the line. Oh, Lavelle? Really? Yeah, send me a link to that on Twitter, Wise Monkey. I want to check into that. There are some strange folks in the grifter cloud. Yeah. Greer and Ashton leapfrogging each other this Easter. It wouldn't surprise me. So, listen, we have done our due diligence. I apologize for making it a short week for live shows, but given the holiday coming and the schedule and trying to get something done at that cabin, I just got to do whatever I got to do. Next week, I'm certain that there will be 3 or 4 live shows. I have 2 prepared in folders ready to go that require just a little bit more. Some data-driven, good presentations with some, data and graphics and a real presentation. I've got 2 shows like that already just about together. So, and I'm sure some things will be happening during my time at the cabin that I want to talk about when I return. So you could look forward to 3 or 4 live shows next week. But this week, can only do so much. We'll play some of the Truthseekers classic episodes. I got a couple picked out that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. Again, those will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah. And we appreciate all of the support. Aaron Flores is a member and says, I'm sincerely happy to contribute to you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Right? Pathfinder says, looking forward to it, Stephen. Yeah. Alga Ray says, something always happens in UFO land. Yeah, there's always something to talk about. This week, I think, though, has been a slow week. You see, the problem now is that all these grifters are trying to recover and figure out what the hell to do next after their bluff was called with this fake Grush narrative. They're all trying to figure out what's the next big money grab grift, So it's a little quiet out there in grifty UFO land. This week, at least that's been my experience, or maybe it's just that I'm so busy with my children are home this week. It's spring break, and I get so busy with them that I'm not constantly connected looking into things as much. So maybe it's just my perception it was a slow week, but I really feel that way. I'm going to start saying that's a load of Greer instead of BS. Yes. Patty's correct. Says Kirkpatrick busted their bubble. Yeah. Yeah, and I think they really are trying to figure out what do we do to get around the grift next, What new grift can we run that'll be bigger than Grushed? I'm telling you, that's what they're thinking, right? Wise Monkey says, enjoy your Easter break, Steve. I will, yeah. I'm only really taking a break from the show, though. There's always other work to do, Wise Monkey. So although I won't be producing any content for the next couple of days while I'm at the cabin, I'm hopefully going to be producing some porch columns and porch parts because I have too many projects and I really need to get some of them just done and off my to-do list. So one of the big targets for trying to do that is to just get this porch project done. But as some of you may be aware, if you've seen pictures of my cabin, everything we do there is stupid. Everything we do there is takes way longer because we're not buying materials. We're using trees. So there's a whole step that I have to go through to we got to find appropriate trees and cut them down. And then I have to peel all the bark off of them and prepare them and de-branch them. And there is, I've been, a lot of things have been coming across my feed lately that is nicely built cabins, but they're just go to Home Depot and buy 2x4s and wood and put them together, some cool looking A-frame cabins and things. There's something to be said for that. Having just worked myself like crazy to build things out of the natural materials. It's what I wanted, though. I didn't want a cabin that looked like I just slapped it together from lumber I bought at Home Depot. I wanted something a little more rustic and log cabin like. So doing the best I can doing that. But man, it is tough because, like I said, normally you go to build something, you go to the store, you buy the materials, and then you build it. Or you get the materials delivered and you build it. This one, it's like, well, first I need some posts. So we got to cut down 4 trees. And then we have to debark them and debranch them. And, yeah, it's very labor intensive. So calling it a break is not really appropriate. I'm going to be cursing at you, Wise Monkey, peeling logs with that log peeler. Like, Wise Monkey telling me I'm taking a break. Shut up, Wise Monkey. But I do love it. And there's something, sometimes the greatest feeling of accomplishment I have is when I do something that's extremely challenging and hard, like building that living room out of all those logs that had to be stacked and cut and peeled and all of that and cemented in. And, but the greatest feeling in the world to me is doing something that's very difficult like that to completion and then stepping back and looking at it. Like, I have such pride for what I've accomplished at that place. And I'm looking forward to spring because I'm going to build a new cabin sort of backwoods off in the mountains, even more so. You can't even drive a car to where the next cabin is going to be. You have to hike in a few miles. Yeah, I love that stuff, but it's a break from the show. It's not a break from work. I always have work, right? Spooky's here and says, smash the like button, please. Yes, it really, really does help. Jules Chicky Arlene says, it may take longer, but it's a good way to do it. Yeah, and that cabin's going to be there I swear that cabin will long outlive me and maybe my children. It's built so, it's overbuilt. Yeah, Spooky says, get back to work. Yeah, a man cabin. The next one will be. My wife, I doubt, will ever want to go to the next one, because she doesn't like, it's a little too rustic, like having to hike in a few miles from the main road. So that'll be interesting, though, Patty, because since I know that my wife's not going to go there, I can make it a man cabin and not, worry about accommodating her demands, right? All right. So we've done our due diligence. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. I want to thank you, kind and generous benefactors, you PayPal pledgers, you channel members, Patreon supporters, Twitch subscribers, gold pillars on Pilled when we're there. We appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you for supporting us. It means a lot to me that we have the support that we do. Please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos because it really does help. And we appreciate all of you doing that. So I'm not sure when I'll be back, probably Monday night at 9 p.m. And I hope you'll be here with us. We have these Truthseekers Classic episodes playing tomorrow night, Friday, and Saturday at least. I'm sure I have 3. I'm not sure if I have 4. But every night, 9 p.m., we're going to try doing the replays again. And hopefully you'll support us in doing that. One of the problems that I always see with doing these live streams is that people say, oh, why don't you cover this? And I go, I did 2.5 years ago, and I send them the link, But people tend to forget what we covered so long ago. We've been running the show for over 3 years now. So we want to reuse those assets because there's some great moments in some of those. There's also some great interviews that people kind of forget about. Like I interviewed Whitley Strieber. That's one of Communion fame, and that's one of the replays we'll be doing this weekend. In any case, thank you for your support. Thanks to you kind and generous benefactors and all of you viewers, wherever you're viewing or listening as well. And by the way, if you're listening to the audio podcast, we love and appreciate you, but you are missing all the fun. So go on over to YouTube and hit that little magnifying glass, the search tool, put Truthseekers, one word in there, look for me, the strange guy with sunglasses. Go to our channel, smash the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please come here and participate while we record these podcasts live. You are most welcome. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.